lot of people I know still listen to it and enjoy it, and it still sounds spot on, I think.
Yeah, well, me too. Well, I think that's part of the Albert's magic too, is that Harry and George are able to create timeless, but didn't belong anywhere. Yeah. You know, it sounded different at the time, and that's the way it always has, yeah.
It's got balls, mate. It's got balls.
It's got nuts like a bull. Elephant.
Dog's balls. Well, just talking about rock and roll, Angry, what do you actually think of the state of rock and roll, firstly around the world, and secondly in Australia?
Well, I think Australia's it's okay because we've still got the likes of Airborne out there flying the flag. Yeah. And, you know, there's other Australian bands. I mean, I've always loved Living End, and I've always liked certain things that certain Australians have done and do. So I think there's some music that's being written and played here which is very credible and of such a quality that sustains us as producing as good as anybody else, is what I'm saying. But when you've got bands like Airborne that go over there and just kick people's ass, yeah, we know. You kind of think that's very cool, you know.
Well, you have actually been quoted as a pioneer for Australian hard rock music, and do you think Australian hard rock music is actually getting its own identity these days?
Yeah, I am not surprised that because we up until last year we were touring Europe every year during the summer season, and or spring or autumn through the clubs, but. We would see Australian metal bands, and they'd be at a, you know, like a summer festival in Europe, somewhere in Europe, Germany, France, Spain, whatever. Yeah. And we'd hear these accents, and like I'd never heard of these people, you know. And you come home, and most people, unless they're real metalheads, they've never heard of them either, but they're big over there. Okay. So what it means is that there's one thing that hasn't changed. There are some bands that are so good. They're not too good for here. They're left out. They just don't get that support from radio. They don't get support from TV. So they are of a calibre, if you like, where they're recognised and appreciated overseas, but not here.
Yeah, the Germans do love their metal, don't they?
Yeah, well, yeah, the Germans, so they're there at the forefront, but Europe loves metal, and so does America for that matter, although they don't produce too many great, you know, metal bands. A few, but not many.
And what about the younger, up-and-coming bands? What sort of advice would you have for them, Angry?
Don't sign anything. Yeah. No, fair dinkum. I mean, there's still, to this day in this country, there's still thieves and you know, scallywags and charlatans that, you know, masquerade as rock and roll managers.
Well, even in the music industry?
Oh, yes.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Just surprise, surprise, surprise. But I think what kids have got to realise is that there's people over there that know. There's very few people here know. And there's people over there that know and can offer them a better world, a better deal, a better shot. So they just hang in there, you know, get their stuff. See, the good thing about, you know, there's good and bad about everything, but good thing about computers and all that shit now is you can take your music immediately right around the world without anybody here fucking you around.
Well, what do you actually think about the downloading? I mean, it's not one of the questions, but what do you think about downloading? Where do you stand with that, Angry?
Well, I suppose we've had so much trouble with distribution around the world because we're such a niche band that I suppose in our case, I mean, you know, I get MySpace mail from sort of 14-year-old kids in fucking Canada and go like, I've just discovered you know, the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And it's one of our real. And if it wasn't for download, they would never would have heard the album. You know, so yeah, I got nothing to complain about.
Yeah, mate, makes
I mean, I understand the whole muso missing out on the money thing, but we're not missing out on much anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so I think there's always been that. I mean, Jesus, we copied one another's cassettes.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a tacker, we had these things called cassettes, and you know, we go out and buy a box of dubs and you know, blanks and copy. I mean, it's you know, that's copying, that's downloading, it's piracy, it's fucking replicating without you know, without permission. So, what do you do?
All right, Angry. Just regarding Rose Tattoo, like I know one of my first concerts was an old Melbourne gig in 1984. I was lucky enough to go on the Saturday night after the Friday night riot. My question.
Oh, that one.
Oh, that one. Yeah. Well, my question to you is, what is it actually like being on stage, wielding the power and energy of Rose Tattoo, and having the basically the audience in the palm of your hand, having that power behind you?
It's like great sex. It's kind of it's only great because you're both working hard at it, and it only happens when you give and they give, and then you take and they take, and it's an energy thing. It's a moment that just comes cosmically for that moment, for that time slot, and it's something that it's a great feeling to be part of it. I would never prescribe that any singer or any band is so good they can just do it. I mean, of course they do it. That's why it happens. But it's not something that isn't given with generosity, and it's the audience that elevates you, and it's you that elevates them. Yeah. So it's just like that. It's like great sex, you know. It's like you know, you give it your best, and they give it their best, and away you go.
So the audience gets a jolly good rogering, and vice versa, and vice versa.
Yeah, yes.